The last 1 month or so, I have been involved in a bread battle. So there are three types of breads that I normally keep in my kitchen when I don't have time to make them myself. One calls itself a ragi loaf, and I turn it around and I see it only has 6% ragi. The rest of it is refined flour. The other calls itself a multigrain loaf. Turn it around and it only has refined wheat flour, again maida, and there's no other grain, so it's not even multigrain. The third was actually my favorite and the one that annoyed me the most. It calls itself a no maida bread. And I turn it around and it doesn't have maida, it has whole wheat flour, but it also has added gluten in it, which once again makes it as bad as maida because gluten is the part of maida which causes inflammation in your gut. And I've been readily having these breads so every other week. I feel when I buy them that I'm making a healthy choice because they're obviously labeling themselves as something that's good for me. And it isn't. And it's a big shock when you turn something around and you see you've been having it and it's nothing of what it promised to be. This is Sonali Acharji, and you are listening to Health Wealth, a podcast that brings together experts, science, and experiences to give you practical and simple solutions for your well-being. I started this podcast because I am you. I actually don't have the time to look at labels. I go into a market, I read what's written in the front of it. At best, I check the expiry date and I pick it up. I don't buy cookies and cupcakes and cakes and chips because these I know are bad for me. These I know I don't have to eat very often. But things like multigrain bread, I don't think twice before buying them. And it not only bothers me that this is not good for me on a nutritional basis, it also bothers me that when you see the calorie count of them, one slice of bread is 200 calories of the multigrain bread I've been having. To put this in perspective, one cupcake gives you 400 calories. So 2 slices of bread is equivalent to having a cupcake for me. So I might as well have the cupcake then, right? If I'm going through that trouble, if I'm, swapping my dalda for pure ghee and I'm getting blueberries and cranberries from all over the world for myself, at least the one-off thing that I'm buying, like bread, shouldn't be adding weight and problems to my health. And it turns out I'm not the only one who's going through this. In 2023, there was a study done by the National Institute of Nutrition. It was conducted across 5 cities in India, and it found only 16% actually looked at the nutritional value of the product they buy. About 80% looked at the product name, and 74% checked the expiry date. And you might ask yourself, why does this matter? Why? Okay, so I have one or two wrong things. Is it really going to impact me so much? It does, because between 2008 and 2010, the ICMR did another study which found that our consumption of sugar and fat has doubled in a decade. Other studies have shown that we consume more salt than any other nation in the world right now. And all three, sugar, salt, and fat, are linked to almost every other non-communicable lifestyle disease that exists today. And part of that reason is the fact that we don't really think too much about what we are buying, the ready-made products that come into our kitchen and onto our plates. We've done episodes on nutrition already, but I think this one is equally relevant to answer the question, how do I buy ready-made healthy products? Personally, I have 2 solutions. And the first one we're going to discuss with our guest today. I connect with companies who have a commitment and philosophy towards healthy food. And I like to reach out to them and find out a bit more about what they're doing and what are the practices that they put into place. One such company is Cinnamon Kitchen. The founder is here with me today. Her name is Priyasha Saluja. She is, amongst many things, a certified hormone health coach, a self taught plant based chef, and we've all enjoyed watching her on Shark Tank. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thanks for having me, Sonali.
Priyasha, you know, I think with knowledge and experience, a lot of our philosophies and attitudes change. How has your approach to healthy food changed over the years?
That's a really interesting question. I believe when I started off understanding what healthy food is, it was back when I was 14, 15. I realized that all the gluten and dairy that I'd been consuming growing up in a Punjabi household wasn't the best for me, you know. I remember traveling to London and the first time drinking a cold pressed carrot juice. And I still distinctly remember how that made me feel on the inside. It was as if my gut was recharged and replenished and energized again. And ever since I realized that the food that I'd been eating so far, how it had been affecting me and causing inflammation. When I got back home, I tried to make a bunch of things that I'd eaten there over the course of my trip. So I tried making stir fried vegetables. I started getting blueberries, as you were rightly pointing out, cranberries, and really trying to source the best of ingredients. That this was about more than a decade ago, so things were not as readily available as they are now.
Yeah.
I went through various phases within my journey of healthy eating. One was this phase of realizing that I don't want to eat anything that is quintessentially Indian because that had what had been affecting me so far and my health. So I started relying completely on, say, blueberries, avocados, and stir-fried vegetables and such, right? Tofu and such. Which to me became really difficult to manage on an everyday basis because it was such a departure from the food that we were used to eating. Also, none of that was local and seasonal. I now realize, after more than a decade of trial and error going through different phases of eating, that the best way to be eating sustainable is that you have to follow a few basic principles. The first and foremost is portion control. No matter what you're eating and where you're sourcing it from, if your portions are not in control, if your calorie count is not in control, you're never going to reap the benefits of it. It's going to pile up in your body. We currently have quite sedentary lifestyles. So we need to make sure that our calorie intake and our calorie expenditure is in tandem, right? The other thing is eating simple, seasonal, and local. I feel like this is in recent times, actually, there's been quite a movement about it, but this is a very understated thing because we're so influenced by the West, and our idea of eating healthy comes from the West primarily. But if you're able to eat local and seasonal, eat fermented Indian foods, understand what foods are available in what season, I believe that understanding is also not very prevalent. Be able to source good quality ingredients, right? So if I am sourcing peanuts, for example, I make sure that they're certified organic. If I am sourcing pulses, I make sure that they're not polished. Or if I'm getting my vegetables, I make sure that I'm getting them from a farm that doesn't use a lot of pesticides. I believe those are some of the basic principles that you follow. In terms of your diet, you see what your plate looks like. Having a balanced plate is very important. So you make sure that you're getting your veggies, you make sure you're getting your protein, whatever the sources may be. But whatever the sources are, they just need to be good quality, right? So if you have a moderate exercise routine, if you're managing your portions, and if you're taking care of what your plate looks like, right, and eating local and seasonal with good quality ingredients, I believe that is it. There isn't a big science to it.
Yeah. And you've also had a bit of a journey with hormones. And, I think this is a topic which is only now being talked about.
Yeah.
The extent to which hormonal health or ill health impacts women in particular. Can you share a little bit about what happened and what was your journey like?
Yeah. So I was 13 when I think I got my period for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I got my periods, they were never regular. Initially, the doctor said maybe it takes, about 6 months for them to get regular and it's going to be okay. But what happened after those 6 months was that I started seeing other symptoms of PCOS. So I started seeing a lot of hair growth, a lot of weight gain, lethargy, cramps, you name it. Like, it was not a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
The doctors ran blood tests on me, and I realized that, they realized that I was pre-diabetic, my thyroid levels were off the charts, and, nothing just looked good. And at the time, they put me on a lot of medications, right? Because there's nothing that you can do really to cure PCOS. So the approach that most doctors end up using is to control the symptoms more from a point of view of a blood report level and not from the root, right? I did take these medicines for about a month, and that's when I realized that if I continue to take them, then it's just going to be a lifelong process. And I also, like, somewhere something told me that this was not the only solution.
Yeah.
I felt that there was so much wrong with my diet. There was so much wrong with my activity levels, which actually nobody had asked me about, which I understood like as basic principles of life, that you've got to work out, have some sort of an active lifestyle, and you don't chug like, a whole, cold drink or whatever, it's basic. So when I realized that, I said, okay, if it doesn't work, let me improve my lifestyle and my diet. If it doesn't work, the medications are still there. So at the time, that's a little risk that I took. I didn't follow the doctor's advice, and I went on to just heal my body through the power of clean eating. And I researched a lot at the time. Thankfully, by that time, we had internet in our homes. So it helped me reach out to this world where I understood what is good for you, what is bad for you, how you should be eating, having like a little exercise routine, and just having like a balanced lifestyle. Of course, over time, how I looked at what is healthy, what is not healthy, and what is suiting my body evolved. But that for me was the very beginning of understanding that it's not the medications that are going to cure you. It's the prevention that you have to do at more like a health and a baseline level that is going to last you a lifetime. And that is what also led me to make it a lifestyle, propagate it, and then start the brand.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of hormone correcting medications do have side effects, which are anxiety and depression. I've
Many.
gone through it. And you can say it's a double-edged sword. It does end up improving some hormonal balances, but it does cause a lot of distress. So
Yes.
if one can do it without having to
Right.
take those medications, it's easier.
Yes.
You mentioned two things which are huge internet buzzwords now: clean eating and calorie counting.
Right.
For me, the problem comes when I do not have the time or the energy to make things at home.
Yeah.
I have to go out and buy, even if it's a snack or basic things like, bread. Eggs are easy because eggs, you can just look for an organic certification.
Yes.
But things which have multiple ingredients, you aren't always looking at the, label part of it. You run a brand now, and convince me, why should I buy your brand? How do I trust your brand?
So I'll tell you a few basic things. In fact, I agree. It's the best if you can make things at home. But what we also say at the Cinnamon Kitchen is that I would rather you make things at home.
Yeah.
But if you can't, if you don't have the time for it, if you don't have the know-how, then you can buy it from us. And what I can promise you is that if you had the know-how and you had the time, you would be able to make the exact same product for yourself at home. What I'm giving you is not a bunch of gums and mixers and emulsifiers and a product that tastes good.
Yeah.
But what I'm giving you is just convenience here and nothing else.
Right.
Right? So that is actually the very basis of our philosophy at the kitchen. In fact, even our mission says that we make things with a very limited number of ingredients and minimal processing. Right? So it's just things like blending things together, baking like 5 ingredients. So none of our products are more than 5 or 6 ingredients. And when you see the back of the pack, you will understand what I'm saying. There's no additives. You will never see any sugar substitute. You will never see anything that you cannot pronounce.
Yes.
Right? And what is in the front of the pack is always in the back of the pack. In fact, we have a whole thing that we do on the side of the pack where, because all of our products are 5 or 6 ingredients, we label each one of those ingredients, right? So, for example, if I talk about the highest selling product, which now has become quite synonymous to the brand, which is our fudge. It's dates. It's 70% vegan dark chocolate, which is refined sugar free. It is cacao powder, almond butter. Almond butter is also something that we're making at home ourselves in the kitchen, made out of organic almonds, hazelnuts, and that's it. There is no other ingredient. Now, these are ingredients that you can get yourself. As a part of our workshops, we actually also teach you most of the things that we make in the kitchen. So if you have the time, if you have that interest, you can enroll for our workshops and you will be able to replicate the exact same product.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when I started the brand actually didn't start as I'm doing a business, but it just started as an Instagram page where in fact I was posting recipes of the things that I was making. And the idea was for people to be able to make the same things for themselves at home. It was never a business, right? So even now, when it's evolved, when we realize that actually a lot of people have similar issues, through starting the page actually, I realized that a lot of people got in touch with me and they were like, oh, actually I have this problem too. I have another problem for which the diet fits perfectly, right? How do I go about buying your products? And I was like, actually, I'm not selling. The recipe's right here. How about you take this recipe and make the product for yourself at home? And that's when I realized that people actually didn't have the time or the inclination or the know-how, right, to be able to make the same products, which is what led to the Cinnamon Kitchen in the first place.
Yeah.
So I feel that after that, it is my responsibility to be true to the essence of the brand, which is why we conduct workshops where we're teaching exactly the same things that we're making as a part of our menu. Our ingredients are completely transparent. There is nothing that is hidden there. We also go to the extent of when people come to us and they tell us, listen, I have this problem. Should I buy this product? And if it's not suitable for them, we let them know. We're like, this is not for you. Please don't buy it.
Yeah.
Because I believe you will always be able to sell. You know, India, for that matter, is such a huge market that the scope is quite unlimited here, right? But how will you be able to sustain as a business and answer to your conscience is by building a brand that is truthful.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really believe in as a person. And it's also the philosophy of the business.
You also believe in plant-based eating,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Now, I'll make it known that I'm Bengali. So if I have to give up fish, I need some good
You're
reasons.
a Bengali vegetarian.
I
Bengali vegetarians have fish included. That's the definition. Yes.
Exactly. So if I have to give that up and, start having plant-based food,
Yes.
I do need some good arguments for it. Can you give me some?
See, when I say plant-based, that's why we don't say vegan. We say plant-based, which means that you eat food that is primarily plant-based, right? It's an important distinction to make.
Yeah.
Whenever also people ask me personally, I do tell them that it's not necessary for you to be vegan. Everybody's bodies are very different. Right? So what does work and what we've seen work statistically is that your diet needs to be primarily plant-based, right? After that, if you don't want to incorporate, if fish is something that you've grown up eating, is something that your ancestors have eaten and it's well absorbed within your body and system, we always tell people, please, understand. And it's actually a very common practice. If you see a lot of these healing centers also in Kerala and such, that's what they do. They kind of track your ancestry. They make you realize where you come from and what were the eating patterns over there. Because I think that is something people have really forgotten with the amount of globalization that has come about in food now.
Yeah.
And when you realize that this is actually the food that you've been eating for hundreds of years, it is automatically more available to you,
Yeah.
right? So I would never tell anybody you have to go vegan. For bakery specifically, I feel that dairy is definitely a culprit. And not because dairy per se is bad for you, it is because of the way the dairy is produced, right? There's so many hormones that are pumped inside a cow for them to be able to give milk. And that milk is also not the healthiest and the best quality, right? And now, if you're going to make things with that milk, it is going to disrupt your hormones, right? It's the same thing with chicken and eggs and stuff like that. So, therefore, the philosophy for the bakery is that it's plant-based, it's vegan, it's gluten-free. Gluten is another major allergen that has
I
been
was going to
seen.
ask you about
Yes.
that. While I, might be in two minds about going plant-based,
Yes.
I have seen the benefits of reducing gluten.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about, why you decided to make your products gluten-free, and is that
Right.
easy to do?
So it was a very conscious call of trying to make my products gluten-free. At the time that I was, on my healing journey, I realized that eating rotis that were made out of whole wheat were not sitting well with my gut at all. And I saw that
How
was
did your
a very...
Punjabi household respond
I
to
know,
that?
right? My mother's like, you're going to just not be healthy. You're going to be weak. Your body's not going to be able to digest anything later on, right? That's what they had to say about it. But honestly, the marked difference that I saw was enough to convince me otherwise.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Then I researched a little bit more about it, and I found out that the grain of wheat that
has
we currently
changed.
have has changed, right? So the stranded gluten is much stronger than it was before. And that's what has made it suitable for mass production and consumption.
Yeah.
And for that reason, our bodies are not able to take well to it, right? Also, if you look at our diets, they are not diverse at all. All of our diets are basically you're eating vegetable and you're eating roti, and you're eating it maybe 3 times a day. So the amount of gluten that is being accumulated in your body can never be good for you, right? As you likely said, reducing gluten is the way to go.
Yeah.
The reason my bakery is gluten-free is because you cannot produce things with gluten and without gluten in the same facility for cross-contamination reasons, right? Now, things with gluten are easily available for you in the market. What I'm trying to give you are things that are gluten-free completely, so that you have that option available with you should you choose to excise it, right? For celiacs, for example, gluten is something that can also cause, it can cause major issues, which is why we don't do gluten and gluten-free in the same kitchen, right? So that's where the philosophy of plant-based and gluten-free comes from.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody asks me personally, I never tell them that you have to completely quit gluten. I don't think completely quitting carbs, gluten, any kind of meat or sources of protein is a sustainable way of going about life, right? What is sustainable, exactly what we were talking earlier as well, is for your plate to look sustainable and for you to incorporate a variety of foods into it. So what I'm trying to offer is what people don't typically have, and then what's readily available people can always get from the market.
Is it difficult to run a company where you're not putting preservatives, so the shelf life is going to be a bit less?
Yeah.
At the same time, you're also choosing to not go with a lot of mass market ingredients which make production easier, like gluten or, a lot of trans fat. Okay, maybe not trans fat, but certainly saturated fat, Is it easy to make this a sustainable and profitable business?
I think it is, and I'll tell you why. The consumption patterns have changed drastically over the years. And honestly, I feel that it's not so much about making a profitable business as it is about making something that people want, right? And I feel profitability kind of follows from there. If, of course, some factors like your costing and your production line, all of that are there. But to be able to build a brand that customers want to consume, and to be able to make food as what it should look like, I think is the most rewarding. It is, of course, challenging, but it's also very rewarding, right? When it comes to the shelf life, we're currently at a 45-day shelf life, but honestly, we've been able to reduce moisture levels and improve packaging in a way that now we've seen the same product have a shelf life of 4 months. So it's just doing that R&D that hasn't existed before. But if you see a ready demand, if we know that there's a brand that people trust, and if we put in that effort into the brand and into the products, I don't see how it's not possible to curate it. It's of course easier to go the tried and tested route of just adding gluten to something, adding a bunch of emulsifiers, because it's been done before, right? What we're doing, of course, requires a lot more research, right? But I feel that it goes a long way in also changing the face of what the bakery industry at large can look like, right? And I feel that that is important. That category creation and to make people understand that it's actually possible is important. And I would say that our customers have shown us so much trust over time with what we're doing that, I mean, you've known this from the pitch, I guess, that I only started the brand with 50,000 rupees and reinvested the profits. So it's definitely to say that people have loved the products, ordered them over and over, and shown a ready demand and a need for products like this. And then now it's on us to really push the envelope and be able to offer them more variety within the same category of products.
Yeah. You know, for me, one of the reasons I felt I could trust your product was you had a very unique statement. It said chef owned and led.
Yes.
Which really brings a lot of sense, which makes me feel like I can trust it, because franchises is something that I'm very skeptical about, whether,
Right.
you'd be able to maintain that quality throughout.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that, tagline, and why did that matter to you?
I think, so what happens is now if you see a lot of D2C brands or a lot of bigger brands, they usually go for co-manufacturing. So what they do is that they'll contract manufacture everything and they'll focus on the front end, which is the marketing, the branding, and the brand building, right? For me, it was very important, and it remains really important to be able to do everything in-house. So by doing that, we're responsible and in charge of every single almond that is coming into our kitchen, every single thing that is not coming into our kitchen. Because when you're going for contract manufacturing, a lot of times, I mean, they're at the end of the day not as passionate about your brand as you would be, right? So they might use a lot of ingredients or processes that are not maybe like more economical, but not as great for the product, right? So we try to really avoid that in the kitchen. And for me, the business didn't really start as a business, as I was telling you. It really started as my journey of experimenting in the kitchen and taking it forward from there. So now that it's become a brand that is a bit sizable and is growing, I feel that it's really important for me to keep that essence of it alive, because that is what motivates me to also go to work every day, where I can trust the product that is being made because it's being made right in front of me. We don't even have a production facility somewhere else that somebody else is managing. My production facility is where I sit to date, and I continue to do that for years to come, because I feel that it's so important to look at the product, see if the brand is following the same philosophy, and to be able to also tell everybody that comes to the kitchen. Earlier we had a team of 5 people last year. Now we are a team of 60 people. So be able to tell
All in one kitchen.
All in one
There
kitchen.
must be one large
It's chaos.
kitchen.
Yeah, it is a large kitchen. It's chaotic and it's ever growing.
Yeah.
But it's such a kitchen environments. But everybody who comes into the kitchen, we give them a brief and we tell them clearly. We're like, listen, you're to do something really honest by the people, right? And I tell my managers also straight up, I'm like, if a product is bad for them, when we're giving the briefing, if a product is bad for the consumer, do not give it to them. I'm okay on losing out on sales. I don't care about that, right? So when everybody works with that kind of philosophy in mind, it's very easy to then sort of follow the same. And at the end of the day, when I go into the kitchen, when I'm seeing the process, when I'm seeing the quality of every ingredient that we're sourcing and the mindfulness that we're putting in every product, I can go out and be proud of the product and sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you something as a consumer now,
Right.
not as a, owner and chef. There is a lot of awareness on healthy eating, clean eating, calories today.
Yes.
And, you know, yet we're surrounded with modern temptations. Sometimes there's a moral voice in my head that goes that, okay, don't eat this. This is not
Yeah.
right. And then my body just takes over physically and it's like you're stressed. You've
Right.
just sat in a 4-hour traffic jam. People were not nice to you. Eat it.
Yes.
And you're constantly torn in this sort of internal battle that goes on.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? Or do you not have it at all?
No, I actually have a massive, I often joke, I'm like, I have such a massive sweet tooth, I made a curry or out of it, right? So I think it's important to also recognize what healthy means, right? Because when we're talking about healthy, it is healthy for the mind and healthy for the body, right? Sometimes having that one nice
High
treat is
calorie, horrible treat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not call it horrible. I feel like when we label food as horrible and scary,
Yeah, that's when
the
the moral stuff
association, yes, the
gets
association
worse.
with it is very negative. So if you feel that this is something that you are craving and it's something that your body's asking you to eat, it's okay to go for it. You might not eat a whole plate of it. That's when portion control becomes important. If I'm craving a macaron, if I'm craving a nice croissant, I might have a quarter of it. I might have one macaron instead of having the 4, right? And of course, in moderation.
Ask someone to hide the 4.
Yes, ask someone to hide the 4. Share it. That's where eating
Share
with
it. Oh, yeah, that's
people
a lovely
becomes
thing to say.
important, right?
Yeah.
So you share the happiness. You kind of sit. You divide it into 4.
That's lovely.
Have your coffee and just like have a good time. You'll also end up feeling better.
That's
right?
a good way of doing this.
Yeah, so that's what I do. And also, I feel over time, it's to work with yourself to make your cravings healthier, right? So today, if I am feeling like I want to eat chocolate, I might not feel like eating a 45% or a 40% chocolate that's laden with sugar. I may crave a 70% chocolate. And I feel like that is where the real difference starts, right?
I agree.
When your cravings are not unhealthy, when they become cravings that are sustainable and that you can manage and they're not doing damage to your body, is where you can truly change what health looks like for you.
Yeah. And I think, I recently read this study which showed that when you have too much of refined sugar, it does tend to rewire the way your brain works
And then
and
you
what it
crave for it
craves.
more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe, starting to reduce sugar is one way
Yes.
to make things more sustainable.
Yeah, I feel that going for more natural sources, although, I mean, there is an argument of that your body is processing it the same way. But if you're, say, having something with dates, for example, it's got also more fiber, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's more sustained energy as an energy source.
agree.
And then you also, for me, I think the major thing was also that so many times our brains so used, or our, the indication that our stomach realizes maybe 10 or 20 minutes after what our, if we're full, we're not full, what we're feeling, right? And the brain gets that message later, right? So if you incorporate a salad before a meal, especially like lunch or dinner, and if you're able to chew a lot, then that just gives an indication to your brain that it's actually full. Your stomach's actually full. And I feel like that goes a long way in reducing cravings. So that is something that you could do. Always having a plate of veggies or a salad. So even if you're planning to have a sandwich or a burger, for example, you start off with a big bowl of salad. And then you might just crave half of that burger. You might still enjoy the burger a lot. The other thing to do is to eat slow, right? So, because again, it's the same philosophy that your brain's taking some time to pass on that message to your stomach. So if you're eating slower, if you're chewing more, right? Basic things that I think everybody's been taught and been told over and over, but these are the things that really work. Is if you eat slower and if you portion control again, you're giving enough time for your brain to be able to indicate to your body that it's full and it's satiated, right? Chewing more with salads. And then even if you're having dessert, I mean, just have something that is a bite-sized thing. And the one thing that really helps is also to be able to plan your meals. So if you say that, I'm not saying have a thorough Monday to Friday routine. I mean, you were also asking me that question of how my healthy eating and how it's
Yeah.
changed. What I tried to do earlier was make a schedule that for breakfast I'm going to eat just this and lunch just this. And all of us are really busy. It's not usually possible. Now I give myself 3 or 4 options, okay? And I'm like, during the week, either I'm going to eat this or I'm going to eat that, but I'm going to give myself that flexibility and ask myself what I'm feeling, right? And that's where the choice comes in. When you know that within the realm of these possibilities, it's a conscious choice that you're making, right? You will feel like eating that more because it's a choice that you've made, right? So I may eat a chia pudding. I may eat like a stir-fried tofu, I may eat a bowl of porridge, some grain-free pancakes, something like that. So when I'm giving myself these 3 or 4, some dosa, some moong dal chila, so when I'm giving myself these 4 or 5 options, I'm able to ask myself what I'm feeling that particular day and go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, these are really simple and I think practical insights.
Yes.
And I really like the fact that as a brand, you're so transparent, because I think that brings back a lot of faith in packaged healthy food.
Yeah.
Because at some point, a lot of brands started, making these grand claims on their, front of packaging. And, you turn it around and you realize
Yeah.
it's not the same. It does make you feel like it's better to have the unhealthy food then.
That's where the trust has been broken too, right?
And it has.
And I feel like that is the reason people have started flipping the pack, is because the trust has been broken.
Yeah.
We never used to do that like 10, 12
Never,
years ago.
ever.
It was like, okay, you're telling me this, it's probably
I'll
just
believe
this.
this,
I'll
yeah.
believe it. Now
Yeah.
I mean, I would go to the supermarket. Some point I was so obsessed, right? Go to the supermarket, pick up 5 pack of noodles, right? Put them on a table
yeah.
and just be looking at the pack of each one of them, and then looking at nutrition, sugar, like protein, and the attendant's like, "Mom, are you all right?" And I'm like, "No, I guess I'm not."
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've been there.
But it's so important to do that, I feel.
It is.
And because we're doing that, at the end of the day, the brands are also waking up and realizing that the consumer is not stupid.
No, and I do think that if someone has their practices in place, like you do, you're not going to be averse to sharing the truth about what's going on in your kitchen. So thank you for everything you shared.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I mentioned that, there are 2 solutions that I've come up with for my own philosophy of when it comes to buying ready-made food. One is to speak to the brands. They're all available on social media today. You can always ask them what's really inside your products. And if they really are doing what they say they do, they will respond. The other is to have a nutritionist, and I have very categorically told her that I want you to be available to me on WhatsApp. So sometimes when I flip the packet around and I look at the label and I can't understand things, I send it to her and I say, is this good for me or are they lying? And that helps a lot.
That's a great one.
Yeah. What has your journey been like when it comes to healthy snacking? Has your faith in packaged healthy products gone away, and what are you doing to find solutions for it? Do let me know your thoughts. You can write to us at pods@indiatoday.com, or you can message us on 8588 966 996. We are also available on Facebook, Instagram, X, and WhatsApp channels.